LittleBigPlanet was one of my favourite games, so to be able to speak to Dean Wilkinson and Kenny Young from LittleBigPlanet was an absolute pleasure. So why not join me today as I discuss with you the reasons why the game was truly a masterpiece and also its own downfall. This is the story of LittleBigPlanet. In LittleBigPlanet 1, for the development of making the game, there was a character named Mr. Yellowhead. He ran around the map and could run, jump, pull and push objects just like our adorable protagonist, the Sackboy. This yellow character was a beta look for what was about to come as pure hell for the art team. The look they were going for was a kid-friendly look, as the art designer Krem said, "We reached the style of arts and crafts, the bolting, the sellotaping, the gluing." This art style approach was used as a creative game. They didn't want loads of terminology that used advanced language. They wanted kid-friendly terms like ropes and bolts, for the fact that this was a creative game for kids. However, this would prove an issue for the art team when decorating the protagonist, Sackboy. So much of an issue, for that when they got to the point of drawing concept art for ways Sackboy would die, someone said, "It was quite far along into the project, and I'd really started to hate Sackboy at that point, so I kind of relished the idea of coming up with ways of killing him." Now let's take a look a bit further into Sackboy's whole design. Have you ever wondered about Sackboy's zip? Well, originally it was going to have a purpose. There was always a concept of a place where you play and a place where you build that eventually became the moon, but at this stage various ideas were flying around. An extra room in the pod, a warehouse somewhere, but then Mark came up with a crazy concept. Maybe the place where you go to create is in yourself. Let's put this zip on Sackboy. He opens the zip, folds in on himself, and goes and creates inside himself. Because creativity and ideas are all inside you. I'm thankful to say that this wasn't a feature added, because can you imagine trying to cram a group of 4 players into one Sackboy, or all of you unzipping your character in unison? Yeah, probably for the best you go to the moon to create. So, this Mr. Yellowhead design wouldn't last long, as the team made a new look for the protagonist, Sackboy. Also looking very different, the first level of the game. The first level was to have a beanstalk that players climbed like a Jack and the Beanstalk story. However, it got scrapped for the garden level. And on that note, it brings us to our next subject. The garden music fits really well with the level too, and it's one of the community's favourite pieces of music from the game. Let's find out a little bit more about this magical piece of music from one of the sound designers on the team, Kenny Young.
The gardens one, it was basically like an English country garden was how we referred to it. So hence the garden wall with the snail shells and all the rest of it. So it's literally like a very typical sort of Victorian 2 up, 2 down garden with a little brick wall in it. And so, but the challenge there is like, well, what is the sound of that? And that was actually the toughest brief out of all of the countries, because maybe as a British person it's quite easy to be really ignorant about other cultures and sort of stereotype what they might sound like, but it's a lot harder to stereotype your own culture. And I think it's just interesting, like as a Scot, there's things that I think I could do to sort of stereotype Scotland, but it's something I actually really struggle to do in terms of stereotyping England. And I think that's probably a thing that all British people would struggle with, like, what is the sound of England? And it's not got like a really obvious point of reference. There's things like, like you could say like the Beatles, but the sound of the Beatles isn't the sound of England, it's the sound of the Beatles. So it's just tricky to really sort of hone and distill that down into a tight music brief and bit of music direction. So there was quite a lot of gesticulating about that, but the things that I sort of honed in on was a bit of, for me, I wanted to like capture a range of stuff. So there was like, I wanted to get a little bit of like a 60s or 70s retro vibe in there, and I wanted to have like a string quartet. I felt like that represented like upper class sort of British, just try and get a bit of the class system in there. And yeah, I forget the rest of it, but basically I wrote this brief and I gave it to Matt. I was like, and that's the way I work with the composers when I'm an audio director, is to give them parameters within which to work. So it's not to tell them like exactly what to write, but to say, you know, here's the thinking behind this, here's some of the instrumentation that I think makes sense. Give them all this information, then just let them do their thing. And the first thing Matt came back with was literally an arrangement of, like a rock arrangement of In an English Country Garden. You know, the do 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 in an English country garden. He came back with this like thing with like this like, so it was retro because it sounded kind of like a 70s kids TV theme, but it was too rock, and this was the first level in the game, so the music had to be kind of perfect, and it didn't feel like it gelled. It was too rocky, and like that was just almost too aggressive. And also, I guess the English Country Garden thing felt a bit too like, I don't actually know if that's a kid's tune or if it's a church hymn or what. Like I can't remember what the original context for that is, but it didn't feel like it fitted the game very well. So we sent that one back and we're like, sorry, Matt, it's not working. Matt had some really good ideas and took it to a certain way down the line, and then I would sort of jump in it and basically do some music production to sort of push it a little bit more towards where I thought it needed to be to fit the game. So that's when I added things like I wrote the string part for that, redid the bass part, added the guitar part, and you know, Matt had this amazing flute player, Pete Long, I think I might have got that wrong, but I think that was the chap's name, and he basically just improvised the whole thing, like Matt said, so something a bit like this. Then the guy was like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And then, you know, did this amazing solo in particular. That is like, you know, I can't take any credit for that whatsoever. I had nothing to do with it. But I think that's obviously the standout element of that track, and it wouldn't be anything without that. And so I think that just speaks a lot about the importance of what a live performer and an amazing world-class musician like that can bring to a track. Because without it, it would be nice, but you know, it just wouldn't have elevated that to that like, whoa, this is cool level. So once, you know, and that was there from the beginning. You know, all credit to Matt and to Pete. So it was just the stuff that I did was really just sort of, you know, a bit of production basically. But yeah, all together, the thing just sort of worked really well. So it was, you know, that's obviously the intention when you're doing these things, is for it to be great, but you never quite know what you're going to end up with until you get there. But despite the sort of the rocky start on that track, with the first version of it, it ended up being brilliant. And yeah, I can see why the community, you know, have a soft spot for that one, because it just does seem to sort of encapsulate the project really nicely. So it's good to hear.
However, music wasn't the only thing that was challenging. Sounds were also an issue too. In LittleBigPlanet 1, there was a mumbling voice rather than an in-game voice for dialogue. So rather than a voice, all characters had mumbling like this. However, this wasn't the most easiest thing to make in LittleBigPlanet 2.
We had this rule that we tried to abide by. We couldn't always do it, but generally speaking, we had this sort of principle, which was that we shouldn't be able to do anything that the community can, because that's just really frustrating for someone trying to build a level if they see that we were doing something that they can't. And so in the first game, yeah, the challenge was coming up with unique gibberish voices for each of the different characters, and so there's a few different techniques we've got that went there. Some of the ones that are original ones that aren't based on sound effects they're me. So like the Queen in the Gardens theme, that's me. Any of the other sort of more human type ones, all me. My finest work, I think that was maybe for LittleBigPlanet 2 specifically, because on that project I needed to come up with a that's so ridiculous now to think about it, but like, oh, it's so crazy, because we'd like on the first game we'd come up with the whole gibberish thing, and then meant in the second game, because the team were keen to make it more cinematic and add all the like the cinematic tools and the ability to do cutscenes, etc., there was much more of a justification and argument for adding voice and recording voice. But does that mean we should have, for continuity, we should have voice acting in the game? But you know, like the gibberish is part of like Little Big Planet's like sound now, so we should probably keep gibberish in the levels. The problem that then created was we needed the voice actors who were doing the cutscenes needed to do their own gibberish. So when we were auditioning everyone for that project, at the end of the audition, I would get them to just test to see if they could do gibberish, because it's actually really difficult to do, and some people can't do it. They just don't have the improv skills to think fast enough to be able to, because the challenge is it's very easy to end up repeating yourself and just saying the same sounds over and over. It's also really easy to do something that just sounds quite offensive but not repeat themselves and not say any actual words, any known words, ideally in any language. That turns out to be really difficult. I could do it, which is why I sort of had made that work in the first game. All the localized languages in LittleBigPlanet 2. So obviously we made the game in English. You then get localization agencies to create the German version, the French version, the Spanish version, the Portuguese version, and there's like probably like 12 different languages or something crazy like that for a PlayStation game. And yeah, all of the foreign actors had to create their own gibberish. Because we wanted their voices to match in the cutscenes and to match the gibberish in the game. So that is just crazy, like that I made people do that, but it's just, you got to do what you got to do. So yeah, I came up with a pipeline that could be explained in a document and saying, this is what you need to do, here's how it works, this is a good example of gibberish, this is a bad example of gibberish, don't cast people that can't do this because you need it. And anyway, yeah, so it's quite good fun listening to the gibberish in Japanese and, and all this. It's just a bit mad. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a whole thing, gibberish.
When it comes to the music of a game, the first piece of music you hear is the Left Bank 2 theme. This music piece was chosen due to BBC's 1964 TV show Vision On, a kids show that was overwhelmed with creativity. The TV show had a segment in the show titled The Art Gallery. This showed artwork sent in by kids and would, over the top of a video, have the Left Bank 2 theme play. The team wanted to pay an homage to the show by using the music. So by that we could possibly gather that show had some inspiration for the game. Now, to finish off with music and sound, let's find out what Kenny's favourite sound effect was.
But the one that I look back on with the most sort of nostalgia probably is the bubble collect and prize collect sounds. I do remember that when you collect a prize bubble, there's this sound that sounds a bit like a chicken almost. It's hard to I was about to do a impression of what it sounds like. It's a bit like a sort of sound, and that was intentional. Like I viewed the prize bubbles in particular a bit like eggs, and obviously I think they're meant to be more like bubbles that you blow from a bubble wand. And that chicken sound, what I'm calling the chicken sound, is actually it was a sound effect of like a witch laughing. But for some reason, if you just took one little cackle of it, it just ended up sounding a bit like a chicken. So anyway, that's a bit of a weird one. But again, I'm really proud of those sounds because I think they are satisfying. They do what they're meant to do, and I've never heard anyone complain about them or be like, every time that sound plays, I want to stab my ears or whatever. It just works, and that's a job well done from my perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely a satisfying sound. LittleBigPlanet 1's antagonist is the Collector, At the end of the final level, you find all of your friends you made along the rest of the levels trapped by the antagonist, the Collector, but all he really wants is friends. He openly confesses at the end of the level that he only stole things because he was jealous that he didn't have any friends to share his creations with. The King, the first character that you meet in the franchise, suggests that the rest of the LittleBigPlanet community can be his friends, and he seems to agree, and is ultimately forgiven for his criminal ways. This story written is a joyful, kind story with, yes, some very criminal actions of kidnapping and caging up, but the forgiveness is the part to look at here. It's the message of forgiveness and hopefulness and joyfulness that Dean and the writers worked on, something Dean was very enthusiastic about.
The most fun I had writing was the very first LittleBigPlanet, because it was quite nerve-wracking. Not nerve-wracking, but yeah, it was nerve-wracking because it was my first game. I wanted this to 100% positive and friendly. It's like you've suddenly met a load of mates, or a load of people who instantly become your mates and they welcome you and no, come on, you're the same as us, and that's really what I was going for. So anybody who might felt a little bit sort of disenchanted with the world has found this lovely, warm, friendly place, the Images, and Sackboy saying, "Come on, away, we'll have a laugh. We're going to make some stuff," and that was it. And I hope I got that over. So it was definitely the first one because it was the very first foray into this brand new sort of world, if you like. So yeah, number one.
When writing the script, Dean worked on writing dialogue for Rick Mell. Unfortunately, Rick Mell passed away a few days before LittleBigPlanet 3 was revealed, so instead Hugh Laurie took over the role for LittleBigPlanet 3.
Ah, what luck! There's my little chum-to-be ready to come and help me sort out Bunkum. Just a simple press of this button, our adventure will begin.
Now, with Newton, that was interesting because I was terrified of that because they said we're getting Rick Mell to play to voice Newton. And then one day I got a call saying, "Oh, unfortunately, Rick Mill's just died. Can you rewrite the lines? Because they were totally Rick, with all his noises and things. I even wrote his noises in the, so yeah, it's Newton. So can you tweak the character Newton to fit with Hugh Laurie? And obviously, those frying Laurie, so I love Hugh Laurie as well. But yeah, I spent a bit of time redoing that. But that was another great honour, writing for Hugh Laurie. So it was, I kind of got to write for a lot of my heroes, and frying Laurie, can't get much better than that, I don't think. We've got Media Molecule said we've got this game. We think you'd really be great for it, and. But we've got a little sack character that's going to walk about, and there's going to be a voice of it explaining these quite intricate tutorials. And we want a voice, but we don't. We've got a slight idea that we want the voice to be quite like the voice of the book in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And when I said that was my inspiration for being a writer, was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book, we sort of just clicked. They said, can he explain things? So give him a personality. And what is the point of this world? We don't know what the point of it is. Where is this? Where they are? And what powers it? And I said, let me go away and think of it. And then I just started getting all these ideas, like let's call it the Imagisphere. And it's forever growing exponentially by all the positive thoughts and notions that come from human beings who are really amazing characters and creatures if they only knew how amazing their minds were. So every positive and great notion or massive idea rises up to the Imagisphere, that we're all connected to it via cerebrum umbilical cord. Don't know where that came from. And it builds to this world, and it's just a pure world of absolute ideas and warmth and positivity. So yeah, they love that. So we started on it. You know, however long ago it was, 12, 13 years ago, I've never written a game where I've been so alive and loving it.
Am I correct in thinking that you have a book?
About to start work on a film version with tunes for Leprechaun Legacy. There's a one book out now, Leprechaun Legacy, The Last Gatekeeper, and it's on Amazon. If you type in Dean Wilkinson, you can find all my books. But Toons have bought the rights. I'm going to meld book 1 and book 2, which is out soon, into a movie script for them fairly soon. I've done another script for them recently based on the Goosebumps series that's starting filming soon. Hopefully this is going to be as big as Goosebumps. So get on Amazon, get a copy of The Leprechaun Legacy by Dean Wilkinson. You'll love it.
The game's death has one main cause external, and a side cause internal to the franchise's development, something that may surprise you, but LittleBigPlanet destroyed itself. Now, one of the main parts of LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2 falling apart is that hackers attacked LittleBigPlanet with transphobic images. Sony quickly took the servers offline and they tried to address the issue, but on September 13th, 2021, LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2 servers were shut down for good. However, I think there is one other reason. I think LittleBigPlanet ruined itself by spreading the player base too thin. A game that relies on a community won't thrive without that community. The replayability of LittleBigPlanet comes from the community levels being made. Thus, when LittleBigPlanet 2 was made, people converted to a different game, LittleBigPlanet 2 rather than 1. Then LittleBigPlanet 3 came along, and then also add that people went onto the PS4 to play LittleBigPlanet 3. So now there was 4 places that people could play LittleBigPlanet, not including karting and PS Vita. There was LittleBigPlanet 1 on the PlayStation 3, LittleBigPlanet 2 on the PlayStation 3, LittleBigPlanet 3 on the PlayStation 3, and LittleBigPlanet 3 on the PlayStation 4. I think they split players up too much, and this led to its downfall. Had this been a PC game, it may have survived, but because its franchise went into different consoles, it injured the franchise. Thus, LittleBigPlanet effectively killed itself in a turnaround way, and this is why community-based games don't belong on console. But let's not ignore the fact that this game is still a masterpiece of a game. Even with a bittersweet end, the game is still a master at community games, and one of the best games I've ever played.